Hey, what's up everyone? Jamie here from CLA Community Learning Alternatives, and it's What the Tech Wednesday, where we talk about the latest in consumer technology, computers, the internet, mobile phones, web apps, and everything in between. However, today is a very special day where we're only going to talk about one thing: America's return to manned spaceflight after nearly 10 years. SpaceX, the private American aerospace manufacturer and space transportation services company founded by tech mogul Elon Musk, is about to launch its Crew Dragon rocket and is making history by bringing back human spaceflight to U.S. soil.
But before we hand over all the reins, this mission is the final demonstration flight for SpaceX. Its purpose will be to test all the aspects of their crew transportation system, including their launch pad, launch vehicle, and spacecraft. The success of all these components could make or break if this new era of human spaceflight can be brought back to the United States. Launching humans into space is an inspiring yet daunting task. It takes years of planning, labor, brave participants, and let's not forget, enormous rockets. But for decades, this unique endeavor has stayed within the confines of government bodies. The last time we launched anyone from the US was when the Space Shuttle program retired in 2011. And bringing launches back stirs a sense of pride for the country and for Robert Behnken, one of the astronauts that will be on board for Demo 2.
I think we have a different perspective of the importance of coming to Florida, launching again on an American rocket from the coast, and generations of people who maybe didn't get a chance to see a space shuttle launch, getting a chance again to see human spaceflight in our own backyard, if you will, is pretty exciting to be a part of.
And this will only be the 5th time in US history that NASA astronauts were put into a brand new spacecraft, one that's cost-effective, reusable, and in our humble 21st century opinion, looks pretty cool and nothing like NASA has had before. On the exterior, the Crew Dragon is broken down into 2 segments: the capsule, which is designed to carry critical pressurized cargo and people, and the trunk, which is an unpressurized service module. Outside the capsule, you'll find the Draco thrusters that help propel the vehicle, and around the trunk, you can find the solar arrays that power the spacecraft. Now, stepping inside Crew Dragon, you definitely start to get Space Odyssey vibes. Contrary to the Soyuz capsule or the Space Shuttle, which had buttons lining the walls, Crew Dragon is a minimalist design outfitted with seats for the passengers who face touchscreen displays. Plus, the craft has an environmental control and life support system that helps keep a stabilized pressure for humans and other life on board, as well as keeping temperatures between a cozy 18 and 27 degrees Celsius. But the best feature of all, the Crew Dragon is completely autonomous. The vehicle basically parks itself on the ISS, and Demo 2 will be the first time the spacecraft will be able to do so with crew on board.
Really, the goal of all the things is to try to decrease the workload on the individuals, and the SpaceX vehicle really does that from an astronaut perspective. We can focus on the real mission of astronauts with respect to space station is to perform the science and the research that folks want to do in low Earth orbit, and an extensive training flow to really understand and operate a rocket and a spacecraft is a pretty big burden. And so the automation that the SpaceX vehicle brings really does offload and decrease the amount of training and kind of the burden, if you will. And it's nice to really reduce that with the Dragon spacecraft.
Which is a huge compliment. Behnken and his flight companion Doug Hurley are both seasoned astronauts, having flown with the Space Shuttle program before. And they've met with the SpaceX teams extensively to have their input into the design and reliability of Crew Dragon. So what's it going to look like on launch day? The mission timeline will go like this. Behnken and Hurley will undergo quarantine until launch, which is currently scheduled for May 27, 2020, pending weather and other conditions. At countdown's mark, the pair will be launched into the atmosphere for a few minutes, and at that point, the Falcon 9 booster will detach and attempt to land on one of the company's off-coast drone ships. Once in orbit, the crew will unbuckle, conduct a first series of testing on board, rest, and wait less than 24 hours until they reach the ISS. Once arrived, the crew will test out the new touchscreen controls for manual docking, just in case in the future the automation goes out. If that's clear, the system will return to autonomous control and dock Behnken and Hurley safely. They will remain in space for about 110 days or more in order for the Crew Dragon to go through more remote testing from the ground as well as monitor the degradation of the solar arrays on the craft. For return, the Crew Dragon will break from orbit, again autonomously, and strip away the trunk since it won't need it. It will re-enter the atmosphere, and minutes later, the Mark III parachutes will deploy and land Crew Dragon into the Atlantic to be recovered from the ground team. This is by far the riskiest and most important mission that SpaceX has ever conducted. But its success means the teams have paved the way for a new age of spaceflight that will continue to push the boundaries of human exploration, which is why NASA opened its doors to commercial programs in the first place, to get innovative designs to not only take us to the ISS, but to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. SpaceX is just one launch away from making our curiosities a reality.
2, 1, 0. Ignition.
After dozens of rocket launches, for the first time ever, SpaceX is finally sending the most valuable cargo into space: 2 human astronauts. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley will blast off on a mission that could revolutionize how we get to the final frontier.
We're going to have more access to space at a better cost than at any point in human history.
You see, nearly a decade ago, NASA kicked off a new kind of space race, with the government agency awarding $3.1 billion to SpaceX and $4.8 billion to Boeing, an investment that could wind up saving NASA $20 to $30 billion. The 30 years long space shuttle program cost over an estimated $200 billion.
It's been 17 years to get to this point, from 2002 to now. To be frank, I'm a little emotionally exhausted.
That emotionally charged journey for CEO and founder Elon Musk began in 2002 with the creation of SpaceX.
Launch flight operations. Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
That was designed to make space travel more affordable by reusing booster rockets that can land themselves after a launch, all with this ultimate goal in mind.
I really believe in the future of space, and I think it's important that we become a spacefaring civilization and be out there among the stars.
8 years after the company's founding, SpaceX introduced the Falcon 9, a 2-stage reusable rocket that's been shuttling supplies to the International Space Station since 2012. There have been setbacks as they work to perfect the reusable rocket technology, but since then they've been landing rockets on both land and sea.
Oh, I always thought we would fail, so this is it's all upside. But it's worth trying anyway. First 3 launches of Falcon 1 didn't work, and the 4th one we scraped together some parts, and that one worked. And if that one hadn't worked, that would have been it for us.
Liftoff.
Other milestones include launching commercial satellites, including dozens of its own Starlink satellites, with an aim to provide space-age internet. The company launched the first recycled Falcon 9 in 2017. A reusable booster that could take part in up to 100 launches, and the Falcon Heavy in 2018. Think 3 Falcon 9s strapped together, and even a Tesla with a human-looking driver on board. No, it's a mannequin. All of these leading to the first test of the Dragon capsule in 2019 that would carry the most valuable cargo, human astronauts. The first launch was unmanned, but it was successful, which is what makes the next launch possible. They'll lift off from Launch Pad 39A, traveling at the speed of 17,000 miles an hour to the International Space Station, and bring them back home, hopefully safe and sound, securing Musk's status as a new kind of space pioneer. Emily Chang, Bloomberg, San Francisco.
When SpaceX and NASA send their first crewed commercial flight to the International Space Station today, the astronauts on board will barely have to lift a finger. The folks at CNET show us how a touchscreen controls SpaceX's new spacecraft.
As part of NASA's Commercial Crew program, SpaceX is sending NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley to the International Space Station. They'll blast off on the Falcon 9 rocket as part of the Demo 2 mission. This is the first time a private company has taken humans into space, and the first rocket launch on American soil since the shuttle program ended in 2011. But things have changed a lot in 9 years, and this spacecraft is unlike anything NASA has ever used before. SpaceX's Crew Dragon capsule is designed to carry humans and cargo completely autonomously. In fact, in March 2020, it became the first spacecraft in American history to autonomously dock with the ISS. Thanks to its fully autonomous system, Crew Dragon loses a lot of the controls we've seen in spacecraft in the past. There are some physical controls in case of emergency, but the wall of buttons and dials from back in the shuttle days, that's been replaced by 3 large touchscreens. These displays will show Benken and Hurley everything that's going on inside and outside the spacecraft. The Crew Dragon is capable of flying completely autonomously, but because this is a test flight, the astronauts will also use the touchscreens to test manual flight near the ISS. Benken and Hurley both flew on shuttle missions in the early 2000s. They're used to seeing every available surface crammed with buttons, switches, and hand controls to maneuver the spacecraft. The touchscreens on the Crew Dragon don't give the same kind of tactile feedback, and that's kind of a big deal.
Growing up as a pilot, my whole career, having a certain way to control a vehicle, this is certainly different. The difference is you've got to be very deliberate when you're putting an input in with a touchscreen relative to what you would do with a stick, because you know when you're flying an airplane, for example, if I push the stick forward, it's going to go down. I have to actually make a concerted effort to do that with a touchscreen.
Benken and Hurley will also be wearing new spacesuits with special gloves to help them use the touchscreens mid-flight. Those gloves aren't the only new feature on the spacesuit. Each suit is custom designed by SpaceX for whoever wears it. A single umbilical connection on the leg routes in cooling air and communication systems to the pressurized suit, and a 3D printed helmet gives it that very Daft Punk look. We've certainly come a long way since the silver spacesuits of NASA's Mercury program. But that's not the only thing that's changed since the 60s. Back then, the spacecraft was so small that astronauts joked you didn't get in it, you put it on. Now, the Crew Dragon is designed to carry 7 passengers, and it has 3 windows to give them all a good view. The idea is that this spacecraft could one day carry tourists into space. In fact, SpaceX has already partnered with tourism company Space Adventures to sell seats in the Crew Dragon for private passengers as early as 2021. But even though this space capsule looks futuristic, don't expect touchscreens to become the new normal for space travel.
I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb to say that the right answer for all flying is to not switch to a touchscreen necessarily, but for the tasks that we have and the capabilities to kind of keep ourselves safe flying close to the International Space Station, the touchscreen is going to provide us that capability just fine.
Still, it's exciting to think that the next generation of astronauts and space tourists could fly into space without lifting a finger.